When growing crops, or plants in general, in between solar arrays, you've created something called a novel ecosystem, which is a non-historical assemblage of species that results from the combined effects of land cover change and environmental management. Now, this can have a multitude of benefits. For example, the shade of the PV panels provides reduced plant drought stress, greater food production, and in exchange, the solar panels get a reduced heat stress. Today we're gonna look at the results of a study that focused on the benefits of agrivoltaics and did so by growing 3 common agricultural species that represent different types of crops in dryland environments: chiltepin pepper, jalapeno, and cherry tomato. For those of you who are curious, the panels had a 32-degree tilt and were mounted 3.3 meters above the ground at the lowest end. The results of the study were as follows. Cumulative CO2 uptake in chiltepin was 33% greater in the agrivoltaic installation, but there was no difference in the water use efficiency of the plants. As a result, total chiltepin fruit production was 3 times greater under the PV panels in an agrivoltaic system than when they were grown on a normal field. Cumulative CO2 uptake in jalapeno was 11% lower in the agrivoltaic system than in the traditional growing area, which suggests a light limitation in the setting. However, the water use efficiency was 157% greater in the agrivoltaic system, and ultimately the total fruit production was nearly equal between the two treatments, but this was attained with a 65% less transpirational water loss. And finally, the scientists chose cherry tomatoes because it is a very heat-sensitive crop, in that summer flower production is accompanied by abortion due to excessive temperatures. Cumulative CO2 uptake was 65% greater in the agrivoltaic installation than in the traditional growing area, and water use efficiency was also 65% greater, meaning that transpirational water loss was equal between the two growing areas. So the increased productivity in an agrivoltaic system was probably due to an alleviation of multiple stress factors. Ultimately, the total fruit production was twice as great under the PV panels than in the traditional growing environment for cherry tomatoes. The scientists also discovered the greatest influence of an agrivoltaic system on soil moisture savings when irrigating every 2 days, as soil moisture remained about 15% greater than in the control setting. They also found that PV panels in a traditional ground-mounted setting were much warmer during the day and experienced a greater within-day variation than those mounted over an agrivoltaic understory. And they attribute the slower daytime temperatures of the PV panels in an agrivoltaic system to the greater balance of latent heat energy exchange from plant transpiration. So the study showed that the novel agrivoltaic ecosystems create a more habitable microclimate not only for the plants but for the solar panels too. And what's also important is that the cooler microclimates are a lot more easier to work in for the farmers or laborers, as it's very logical that a person can get a heat stroke when working in the sun all day. So an agrivoltaic setup can bring better working conditions for your employees. Let me know if you have anything to add to today's conversation about agrivoltaics, and thanks for watching.